Animals are disappearing. Yes, extinction is a natural phenomenon, but according to a recent article, modern extinction rates are occurring 1,000 times faster than natural background rates. So what does this mean to us? Well, for pretty much most of us in our lifetimes, since 1970, we have lost half of the world's biodiversity. We are in the midst of a mass extinction on par with the disappearance of the dinosaurs. Only this time, it's human-caused. And our national parks are not immune to these extinctions. In Yosemite National Park, we nearly lost the bighorn sheep, a wilderness icon, and the peregrine falcon, the fastest animal on Earth. For thousands of years, these animals, they lived in Yosemite National Park, and then about 100 years ago, they disappeared. For most of the 1900s, these animals were mere ghosts in the Yosemite landscape. What happened to cause the disappearance of these animals in Yosemite, a protected national park? And maybe more importantly, what can we do to bring them back? Let's take a look at these two species. They're both in different stages of recovery, and they're both surviving against incredible odds. The story begins in 1848, when gold was first discovered in the Sierra Nevada. At that time, there was no Yosemite National Park, and there were no protections in place to protect wild animals. The gold rush was on. Thousands of people in search of gold swarmed into the High Sierra. But ultimately, unregulated hunting, trapping, habitat loss, diseases from domestic livestock would forever change the lives of the wild animals living in these mountains. Not everyone endorsed the killing of predators and the grazing of domestic livestock in Yosemite National Park. One of these people was John Muir. John Muir was alarmed at the damage that he saw to the animals and to the land, and he spoke out. He was successful in convincing Theodore Roosevelt to grant Yosemite federal protection in 1890. And in 1916, Yosemite National Park was transferred over into the hands of the newly formed National Park Service. John Muir admired the Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep, and he called them the bravest mountaineers. However, he somewhat naively wrote, "Man is the most dangerous enemy of all, but even from him, our brave mountain dwellers have little to fear in the remote solitudes of the High Sierra." Well, little did Muir know that bighorn sheep had already succumbed to the pressures of man, in particular diseases from their domesticated sheep. While bighorn used to range all throughout Yosemite's high country, by the late 1800s, domestic sheep outnumbered native bighorns. These domestic sheep carried with them fatal diseases. Having no natural resistance to these diseases, infected bighorns perished by the hundreds. And by 1914, bighorns were gone from Yosemite National Park. And by the late 1990s, only 125 individual Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep left in the whole Sierra Nevada. Domestic sheep no longer graze in Yosemite National Park. And the Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep is now listed as an endangered species. One of the objectives of recovery is to maintain enough bighorns in the source herds to then repopulate other areas within their historic range. And that's what happened in Yosemite in the 1980s, when a herd of bighorn sheep was reintroduced into the eastern boundary of Yosemite National Park. But in Yosemite's vast wilderness, the Cathedral Range, only the bones were left behind to remind us of the bighorn's presence. In 1933, a park ranger naturalist discovered a mummified bighorn sheep melting out of the Lyell Glacier. Last summer, my husband and I, we took our daughter on a backpacking trip to see those glaciers before they disappeared. We encountered a ram skull. There we were in the shadow of ancient glaciers and an ancient bighorn sheep. We can't bring the glaciers back, but we can bring the bighorn sheep back. Looking at these bones was like peering through a window from the past into the future. And the future is now. Bighorn sheep now inhabit the Cathedral Range after over 100 years of absence. And I was lucky enough to participate in this landmark event when I assisted state biologists in releasing a herd of bighorn sheep back into the heart of Yosemite's wilderness. Since the release, 2 healthy lambs have been reported from the cathedral herd. This is great news for building this new herd. These lambs are descendants from the Langley herd, which is where this video footage took place. With each new lamb, there's renewed hope for the Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep. The bighorn sheep is well on its way to recovery. Now let's look at another species recovery story. The peregrine falcon. The peregrine falcon is unique in that it is only one of very few species, in fact, 1%, that has been removed from the list of endangered species. So what happened to the peregrine in the first place? Why did we almost lose it to extinction? Beginning in the 1940s, we almost lost the peregrine falcon to DDT, a dangerous pesticide. With over 1 billion pounds of DDT distributed across the US, the residue was inescapable. It concentrated into the peregrine's eggshells, causing them to collapse before the embryos had a chance to grow and mature. By the 1970s, we had nearly lost the peregrine falcon from the eastern US. Their populations were nearly eliminated, and from the western US, they were barely hanging on. But conservationists took action, and in 1972, DDT was banned, and in 1973, the peregrine was listed as endangered. Following the listing, massive recovery efforts took place, including the rearing and releasing of over 6,000 juvenile peregrine falcons into the wild. Yosemite National Park was a focal area for these reintroductions because of its prime cliff habitat. Rock climbers were called upon to help access the cliffs, where they would swap out the DDT-laden eggs with dummy eggs and the dummy eggs with chicks that had been reared from captivity. These efforts worked because in 1978, rock climbers scaling the face of El Capitan in Yosemite Valley discovered an active peregrine falcon nest. This was the first nest documented in Yosemite in over 40 years, and also the only known nest in all of the Sierra Nevada at the time. So the peregrine has made a remarkable comeback. And in Yosemite National Park, we no longer have to manipulate them. We can give them their space to nest and to raise their young. Each summer, we survey and document their breeding success, and we work with rock climbers to ensure their continued protection. This past summer, we documented 13 nesting pairs of peregrine falcons. That number far exceeds biologists' earlier expectations. So we did it. We brought the peregrine falcon in the Sierra Nevada back. We did not allow their extinction. We cared, and we worked hard. And when I say we worked hard, I mean a lot of people worked hard. We had good science. The peregrine falcon is a great model for what is possible. We eliminated the threat of DDT, and we undertook massive recovery efforts, and now we can be hands-off. For the Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep, we identified that disease from domestic sheep was a threat. Domestic sheep haven't grazed in Yosemite for a long time. However, on the east side of Yosemite, they do graze. So we have to stay vigilant. But in the meantime, biologists are capturing and transporting bighorns. We're taking genetic samples. We're relocating selected bighorns to increase the overall genetic fitness. to increase the distribution. And these efforts are working because the population has increased now from 125 animals to over 600 animals. Another animal just entered the picture, literally. This fox strolled by one of our motion sensor cameras last December, and it turned out to be a very rare Sierra Nevada red fox. So rare that this was the first confirmed detection of a Sierra Nevada red fox in Yosemite in almost 100 years, almost a century. Prior to that picture, the last known record of a Sierra Nevada red fox was in 1916 in the park, documented by very different means. Incredibly, the park's chief ranger killed the last remaining Sierra Nevada red fox in the park. Did he know this? I don't think so. I don't think anyone knew this, because at the time, rangers were encouraged to supplement their incomes by trapping predators like coyotes, mountain lions, and foxes. We have come a long way in the last 100 years. Now that we know we have this red fox in Yosemite, we are committed to protecting it. But this is one of the rarest mammals in California, with only 30 to 50 individuals remaining. How do we protect an animal that we know virtually nothing about? We have done it before, and we can do it again. We've already made some progress. Trapping Sierra Nevada red foxes was banned in 1972. And recently, this subspecies was listed as a candidate for federal protection under the Endangered Species Act. We brought the Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep and the Peregrine Falcon back home to Yosemite National Park. We did not allow their extinction. Humans are capable of making really big mistakes, but humans are also capable of going to extreme effort to reverse those mistakes. We brought 2 species back from the brink of extinction, and we can do the same with the Sierra Nevada red fox. We are undertaking a bold journey with these animals fraught with uncertainty, but this hard work is worth it because the next generation needs wild animals and wild places just as much as you and me. Thank you.